Good morning, friends. It's Michelle from Little Farm in the Valley. Today we have another tomato project planned. So every year we make our own pasta sauce, and I know I always have people saying, why don't you just buy pasta sauce from the store? You know, why go through all the work? Hey, Gus. He is getting so big. And of course, the reason that we go through all the work is because store-bought pasta sauce cannot compare to what we make at home. So that's why. So yeah, we do have a busy day ahead of us, and it is quite a bit of work, but so darn worth it. So we could stand here all day and be entertained, but we do have to get to work. So I have 40 pounds of tomatoes weighed out, and I'm gonna wash them, and then we're gonna have to blanch them, peel them, and cut them into really small pieces. So this is gonna take a while. These are tomatoes from our garden, kind of all shapes and sizes and varieties. These are Amish paste. There's some beef steak. This is a beef steak, I think. A whole bunch of different varieties, so we'll have an interesting variety for our sauce. So we'll get this pot filled and get it on the stove, and once it reaches a boil, we're going to add tomatoes and blanch them for 2 or 3 minutes. Then we'll get them back in the sink, and once they're cooled down enough to handle, we're going to do the peeling and the dicing. So that's kind of the first step here in this pasta sauce, the longest step for sure. So our water is boiling. We're going to get some tomatoes in here. Watch out for the splatters of the hot water. So I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes. So while the blanching process is going on, I'm going to tackle these onions. I have 9 onions, and I'm just going to take a cutting board and dice them. I don't really have to be too careful to dice them all the same or uniform or, you know, even very small, because at the end of this pasta sauce, I actually take my immersion blender to it. So it doesn't matter if these onions are kind of all shapes and sizes. They should kind of all be emulsified by the end of the sauce. But still, you know, we'll try to get them all the same. Give them a good wash, and then I'll start dicing them. we're just going to dice these about like this. Our timer just went off, so I'm just going to do this first one, and I'm going to get tomatoes out and more tomatoes in. So it's been 3 minutes. You can see on this one the skin is starting to split. That means it's definitely ready. So we gotta get them out and into the sink. Some people put them in cool water, but I have so much other stuff going on. Like I'll be dealing with onions and garlic and all that stuff. I think that's plenty of time for them to cool off, even if they're not in cold water. They'll be cool by the time I get to them. So to our onions, we are going to add 3 cups of olive oil. And then we're going to put them on the stove. This is just olive oil, I think from Walmart, whatever quality olive oil you usually get. Or maybe even something else, like sunflower oil or peanut oil. Probably whatever oil you use, but we like to use olive oil. So we're going to get this on the stove and get it cooking. And we're going to cook and stir it until the onions are very soft. So I almost forgot about the garlic. I have 36 cloves of garlic. I'm just going to cut it. There's my timer again for tomatoes. So I'm just going to show you a couple real quick. Since everything is going to be emulsified, I'm just going to, like normally I would mince the garlic, but since we're blending everything at the end of the process, I'm just going to snip it into tiny little pieces and cook it with the onions. So I got to get those tomatoes out. I'll come back and finish this later. Alright, we've got our onions on the stove and we're going to get them cooking, and our garlic, and we're going to cook it until it's very soft. So I'm getting the last of the tomatoes out of the blanching pot, and I'll be able to dump that, and we'll probably use it, or we might even need a bigger one once we have all the sauce ingredients put together in a pot. We might even need a bigger one. all the tomatoes cooling down. Once we can handle them, we'll start the peeling and dicing process. So this is by far going to be the most time-consuming part, peeling all of these. We're going to peel easily enough, but it just takes time. And we're going to put them in here, and when we're all done, we'll dice them. They're cool enough to handle very easily. And that skin comes right off. Try to do a really big one. Sometimes the big ones are not quite as easy to peel. Still not too bad. So our onions and garlic seem to be soft enough. So I'm just going to shut off the burner. And then this can stand here and wait until the tomatoes are ready. It smells really good. So I've got all the tomatoes peeled and they're ready to dice. So what I'm going to do is dice them pretty small. I'm going to throw them into this drain that's on my cutting board just to let some more of the juice run off. And then whenever my drain gets full, I'll dump it in here to the pot. And then once we have all the tomatoes peeled, they can go on the stove and we can start the cooking process. I figured draining them a little bit will help my pot not be overfilled. Sometimes all that liquid from the tomatoes overfills your pot a little bit and it doesn't fit in as well as it should. So now that all of our tomatoes are peeled and in the pot, we need to add the onions and the garlic. It's going to be quite full. And then we need to get it on the stove and we need to cook it until the tomatoes are soft. I think it usually takes, once it reaches a boil, it usually takes an hour, maybe an hour and a half I'll have to stir it once I get it on the stove. This pot is a little unsteady in the sink. Okay, now we have it on the stove. So I'll stir it as best I can. And yeah, we just need to bring this to a boil and then let it cook until the tomatoes are soft. I think some of this will evaporate and cook down. We really don't need to add any other ingredients except spices. Oh, actually we do need to add tomato paste. So hopefully it'll cook down enough to add tomato paste, but that's after it's cooked soft. So for now, we'll just have the tomatoes with the onions and the garlic cooking in here. So I'll let that reach a boil, and then I'll have to keep stirring it to make sure we don't have anything burning onto the bottom. So my sauce has cooked for about an hour. It is very soft. The tomatoes are soft. Now I'm adding my homemade tomato paste that I've been making with Roma tomatoes. And my recipe calls for 75 ounces of this tomato paste. So I've kind of been eyeball guessing how many jars that would take. So I'm adding the tomato paste. Then I'm going to let that cook as I stir it for a few minutes. And after I feel like the tomato paste is incorporated, I'm going to add the spices and seasonings. So after adding the tomato paste, I'm going to add the spices. I'm adding a little bit of fennel, lots of oregano and basil. And then I'm going to add a cup of sugar. And this is actually the last few minutes that this is going to be on the stove. If you leave the spices too long as it's cooking, it has a chance to turn bitter, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to incorporate those spices, just get them stirred in, and then I'm taking the pot off of the heat. So next I'm adding some salt. I've made this so often that I'm just eyeballing the salt. And now I'm going to get everything stirred up and take it off of the heat so it doesn't really have a chance for those spices to cook down and potentially turn my pasta sauce bitter. So we have it in the sink, and we have our immersion blender, and we're going to try our best to completely emulsify it. I know there's always a couple bits floating around here and there when I open a jar, like a little piece of tomato, but it's no big deal. We just do the best we can. So here we go. Very nice. So I'll just keep going for a while yet until I decide it's enough. And then we're going to get it in jars. I have my water heating behind me for the water bath. So I'll give this a little bit more because I see some garlic floating around. That was what I didn't want to have happen. I splattered just a little bit on the sink and the windowsill there, but that's why you have to be careful. Trying to stir it up from the bottom since I don't want to reach that blender all the way down there and get it all messy on the red part. I think it looks pretty good. Once I start filling, if I see too many big pieces, maybe once the pot's a little bit emptier, I'll reach my blender down there a little deeper. So I'm not going to clean up the blender yet, but I will start filling some jars. I can tell that tomato paste is really going to thicken it up this year. I can't wait to taste it. Once it's cooled down a little bit, I'll taste some. Should probably have tasted it before, but we make this recipe every year, so kind of expect it to be. The only thing different this year is the homemade tomato paste. So I'm going to fill enough jars to fill the canner. And I'm going to wipe up some tomato stuff before it dries. Make a little bit more better space to fill my jars. I do a little bit of cleanup. But I do want to get the canner going as soon as possible. So I processed this pasta sauce in the water bath canner for 25 minutes for each batch. And I have to say our supply of pasta sauce going into the winter looks really good. Thank you for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a video. And we will talk to you soon.